Picture the most ridiculously successful person you know. Got him in your mind? Well, chances are their secret weapon is not a genius-level IQ. It's definitely not an unparalleled mastery of spreadsheets. It is actually their ability to handle people. In this explainer, we're deconstructing an absolute masterclass of human relations. We're going to map out exactly how you can transform your interactions, your influence, and honestly, your entire trajectory in life using a proven blueprint.
85%. Let that number sink in for a second. Research conducted by the Carnegie Foundation uncovered something that completely shatters how we usually view professional development. They found that a massive 85% of financial success is actually due to skill in human engineering. Think about all those years spent in school grinding purely on facts and figures, when the vast majority of your real-world success actually comes down to this one single vital skill.
To put that into perspective, even if you're in a highly technical field, we're talking engineering, architecture, things like that, your raw technical know-how literally only accounts for about 15% of your success. The overwhelming majority? It all comes down to your personality and your ability to lead people. It's really not just about what you know, it is entirely about how you relate to the people around you.
Now, this timeless wisdom comes straight from Dale Carnegie's legendary guide, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And what's super fascinating here is that this wasn't just cooked up in a vacuum. It actually originated as a living, breathing laboratory for adult human relationships. Carnegie actively tested these principles with thousands of adults, and the idea spread like wildfire, eventually selling tens of millions of copies worldwide. Every new generation discovers it all over again, simply because human nature fundamentally doesn't change.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Fundamental techniques. 2. Making people like you. 3. Winning people over. And 4. Effective leadership.
Let's dive right into Part 1, Fundamental Techniques in Handling People.
At our core, human beings are deeply emotional creatures. We're driven by pride, we're driven by ego, so the absolute worst thing you can do is kick over the beehive by criticizing or complaining. Instead of just ramming your own opinions down someone's throat, you really have to tread softly. You offer honest, sincere appreciation. And perhaps the most crucial piece of the puzzle, figure out what fundamentally motivates them. As Carnegie points out, action springs out of what we fundamentally desire. So to arouse an eager want, you have to stop talking about what you need and start framing your requests entirely around what they want to achieve. If you can pull that off, you literally have the whole world with you.
To really cement this foundation, think about this brilliant mindset shift from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him. That completely flips the script on our natural ego, right? If you walk into every single conversation genuinely believing the other person has something valuable to teach you, you stop hyper-focusing on your own wants. You actively start looking for their good points. And that genuine curiosity, it naturally leads right to the sincere appreciation that people absolutely crave.
All right, moving on to Part 2, 6 ways to make people like you.
Okay, consider the dog. I know, it sounds funny, but a dog is actually the greatest winner of friends the world has ever known. And why is that? Because a dog is genuinely, undeniably happy to see you. When a dog wags its tail and jumps up to greet you, there is zero ulterior motive. The dog doesn't want to sell you real estate, it doesn't want to marry you, it just genuinely likes you. We can learn so much from that pure, uncalculated interest in another living being. So how do we apply that uncalculated interest ourselves? It boils down to 6 concrete steps. First up, be genuinely interested in others. Second, and this sounds almost too simple, smile. Third, remember their name. To them, it's the absolute sweetest sound in any language. Fourth, be a good listener. Really encourage them to talk about themselves. Fifth, talk in terms of their interests. And sixth, make them feel important. By consistently leaning into these steps, you tap into what philosophers call the deepest urge in human nature, which is the craving to be appreciated. When you sincerely elevate someone else's importance, you become completely unforgettable.
Which brings us to Part 3, winning people to your way of thinking.
This step-by-step approach is really all about disarming resistance. First off, realize you can never truly win an argument. Even if you completely crush them with logic, you end up losing the person's goodwill. So avoid arguments entirely. Never bluntly say, "You're wrong." If you make a mistake yourself, admit it quickly and enthusiastically. And when you're discussing an issue, find common ground immediately so the person starts saying, yes, yes, right out of the gate.
Getting those early agreements is absolutely crucial because it sets a psychological pattern. Once a person's pride is moving in a positive, agreeable direction, it's so much harder for them to suddenly pivot back to resistance. Let them do the talking, and you'll build a bridge of understanding rather than a brick wall.
There's this fantastic story in the source material about an auto sales manager named Adolf Seltz, who was dealing with a completely discouraged, disorganized team. Instead of coming in, yelling at them, and handing down a strict quota, he called a meeting and asked them what they expected of him. He actually wrote their ideas up on the board. Then he flipped it and asked, "Okay, now what do I have a right to expect from you?" The team themselves shouted out things like loyalty, teamwork, and 8 hours of enthusiastic work. By stepping back and letting them feel the idea was entirely theirs, he dramatically boosted their performance, a real game changer.
And finally, part 4, be a leader.
Leadership, real leadership, is absolutely not about just bossing people around. It's the delicate art of changing attitudes and behaviors without giving offense or sparking resentment. There's a perfect historical example of this from General Electric. They had this brilliant engineer, Charles Steinmetz, absolute genius with electricity, but a complete failure as the head of the calculating department. GE needed to remove him, but he was highly sensitive and honestly indispensable. So what did they do? They didn't demote him. Instead, they gave him a brand new, highly prestigious title, Consulting Engineer of the General Electric Company. They brought someone else in to run the department, and Steinmetz was absolutely thrilled. They let him save face, avoiding a bruised ego while keeping a massively valuable asset deeply engaged.
To pull off that kind of tact, a truly effective leader relies on a specific set of tools. You always begin with honest praise and appreciation. If someone drops the ball, call attention to it indirectly. Maybe, mention a similar mistake you made in the past, before offering any kind of critique. And crucially, ask questions instead of barking direct orders. Ask things like, "Do you think this would work better?" Or, "What are your thoughts on this approach?" By doing this, and making sure to praise even the slightest improvement, a leader inspires eager, enthusiastic cooperation instead of stubborn rebellion.
All right, let's look at your blueprint for success.
Knowing these 4 core pillars, that's great, but actually doing it is where the real magic happens. Carnegie was incredibly adamant that you shouldn't just passively consume these principles. You have to regard this as a working handbook. Review these concepts every single month. In fact, he even suggested making it a lively game with your friends, family, or colleagues. Tell them about these rules and agree to pay a penalty, like a dime or $1, every single time they catch you violating one. Whether it's criticizing someone or just failing to listen, you literally have to use the world around you as your daily laboratory.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct challenge. You are going to talk to someone today, for sure. A colleague, a barista, your spouse, maybe a client. I want you to look at that very next conversation, not just as another routine chat, but as your first genuine opportunity to master the art of human engineering. Ask yourself, how can I make this person feel sincerely important right now? Because when you master that, you don't just change your own life, you positively transform the lives of absolutely everyone you interact with. So what's your next move going to be?